Welcome once again to Raw Boxing TV. I want to thank you for tuning in to watch this video. I want to ask you to go ahead and subscribe while you're at it. I'd like to ask you to follow me on Twitter at Raw Boxing TV. Share this video, tweet it. Mama's Twitter, Daddy's Twitter, Sister's Twitter, Haters Twitter, Facebook, and everywhere. Spread the love. Let's go ahead and talk about this fight. Canelo Alvarez versus Erislandy Lara. It's a fight that a lot of the boxing fans wanted it to happen. But unfortunately, for some of the haters that did not want this fight to happen, it's going to happen. And a lot of people were using the excuse, what has Lara done to earn a shot at Canelo? Or Lara is not worthy of a shot with Canelo. Or Lara is a boring fighter. He can't take a punch. Well, Canelo is such a big puncher. And there's a lot of information thrown into this subject. And today we'll go over some of them. 2014 has been, so far, a pretty good year for boxing. And a lot of you have come to my channel and tell me, you know, you can't say Lara has ever ducked anybody. Lara never, I'm talking about Canelo, I'm sorry. You can't say Canelo has ever ducked anybody. Canelo never really ducked Lara. We had Canelo Alvarez in a radio interview in Mexico actually just straight up lie. I wish I can find somewhere online a website for this radio station so that I can play that video clip for you guys where they asked Canelo what led him to ask for Lara, and he basically gave a brief explanation of how this is the fight he had been after for the past year and a half, I believe he said, which at the time when I heard that, not only did it make me mad, but I don't even know why I was surprised, because I've often compared Canelo to Oscar De La Hoya when it comes to lying in the sport of boxing. And this was just a little out of hand. To say that this is the fight you've been after, it's disrespectful. Let's not even call it a lie. It's disrespectful. And it's easy for your fans to just say, well, I think my boy is lying. Why? Because it was in your post-press conference on the Angulo fight that you had the man that you had supposedly been chasing for a year and a half come up to you and challenge you. And you proceeded to kind of try to make the public look like, hey, nobody wants to see this fight other than these two reporters here and Lara's manager. You said to that fighter that you had supposedly been chasing after the last 1.5 years that that's not how fights are made, and he had to wait. Well, the fight is happening. Did Canelo duck Lara? Yes, he did. Well, if he did, then how come he asked for him? Why is he fighting him? Simple. Simple. You see, after that post-press, social media blew up. A lot of people started calling him a coward. And now it was not just social media, but now it was justified by a man challenging him. Canelo, being the young man that he is, having the pride that he has, you know, and that's one thing we Latinos have is pride. And pride, it's a double-edged sword. It can help you, but it can kill you. And I'd say it can cause more damage than actual good in your life. But unfortunately, that's something that, and I wouldn't say just Latino, but men in general, let's put it that way. Men in general have pride. And Richard Schaefer said he didn't want to hear no more names. Well, the reason being is because those names weren't actually as big as Lara. I can guarantee you that. And the names that were bigger than Lara were not available because they had fights coming up. So here's the deal. The pride was touched, and he acted on pride. This is the guy I want. I'm going to do the same thing to him I did to Trout. People said I didn't want to face Trout. I wanted him. I faced him, and I beat him. And the reason I go like this, because I've said in a couple of my videos, most people felt he didn't really want. Most people felt the knockdown saved him. Most people felt the fight should have been a draw. In other words, it wasn't a convincing victory for the whole boxing world. So it's not that Canelo never ducked Lara. Yes, he did. He did everything he could to prevent fighting Lara until there was no way out. And now we're fighting Lara. You know, the reason that all these fighters do not get a lot of exposure, and I mean like Lara, Gamboa, and all these people, you got to understand that these fighters come from a country where the government is involved heavily in boxing, and this affects the way they act, because in Cuba they are forced to be this well-mannered gentlemen, and this is shown in the Olympics. This is shown in all of the fights where these fighters bow and these fighters don't talk much, because in Cuba, if you talk too much crap, you're not going to make the Olympic team, regardless of how good you are, you know, because they want you to go out there and represent your country. And Lara is not big on YouTube because he's not out there putting himself out there, selling himself, offending fighters, cursing fighters out. And so this is a negative push towards publicity. So, but that doesn't mean that you're going to mix publicity with skills. It's two different worlds. Skills pay the bills, so as publicity, right? But publicity does not give you skills. Skills could give you a certain level of publicity, because the more you win, the more people see you, and the more people want to see you. Keys to victory in this fight. Actually, no, before we go into the keys of victories in this fight, allow me to clarify something. You guys keep going off of the Angulo fight. Well, Canelo Alvarez is going to kill Lara because Angulo dropped Lara twice, and Canelo just destroyed Angulo. Allowed me to tell you that styles make fight for the 100th time I have said this. Allow me to also explain to you that when we talk Angulo and we talk Canelo, we have two different fighters. Angulo is a pressure fighter, a fighter that's constantly in front of you, or actually was. That was before Lara just completely made him a shut fighter. But Angulo was a fighter that was constantly in your face, throwing punches, nonstop, taking your best shots, giving you good shots. And that style could cause problems to anybody. I don't care who you are. You have a fighter in front of you that no matter where you move, he's still in front of you, throwing punches, and you're giving him the best that you got, but you can't knock him down or knock him out, and you're going to have a tough night. And this was the case of Lara. Now, what's bizarre to me is that that fight with Lara, it went 10 rounds, I believe it was. Angulo only had 2 rounds won in that fight. Every other round was in Lara's pocket. So I don't know how you can say that, well, wow, Angulo just exposed Lara. Excuse me, exposed him in what? He caught him with 2 good shots, and that's that. You have a fighter in front of you that can hit, and you get caught with 2 good shots, which can happen, and you finna go down. Period. So you guys want to focus so much on what those 2 knockdowns because it makes you feel so good. But allow me to bring back to your memory the schooling that Lara gave to Angulo, and allow me to bring back to your memory the beating that Lara gave to Angulo. Allow me to bring back to your memory that Lara forced Angulo into submission. It wasn't no thumb in the eye. I mean, you can say that if it makes you feel good, but it doesn't. It wasn't no thumb in the eye. Now, we move to Angulo versus Canelo. That night, it was funny because a week before that, I was on a radio show, Dante's Boxing Nation Radio, and we were interviewing Francis Barthelemy, which is another Cuban fighter. And we asked him, who you think is going to win, Angulo or Canelo? He said, I think Canelo is going to win. We asked him why. He said, well, basically, it's kind of like how we Cubans say, un pastelito en la entrada de la puerta de una escuela, a cupcake in the school, in the entrance of a school. Pretty much, it's there for the taking, right? It's damaged goods. He said it. This guy has already been shot by Lara, and so now all it is a piece of cake for Angulo to come and grab it and do as he pleases with it. And coincidentally, that's exactly what happened. Fight starts, open belt, and suddenly we don't have the same Angulo that we had versus Lara. We don't have the Angulo that was throwing punches. We don't have the Angulo that was cutting the ring. We don't have the Angulo that dropped his head and came forward. We don't have the Angulo that ripped to the body nonstop. Well, Ranger, you don't understand. Canelo had too much power, too much speed for him. No, that's not what it is. What we had there was a fighter that was so concerned that he was psychologically damaged by his previous fight, that he was so concerned about letting go, opening, like he did in his last fight, because when he remembers his last fight, that he opened up to bring the attack, all he was doing, it was getting pummeled. And so we had a fighter that was more focused on pit-patting and trying to look for an open for one good shot, and in the meantime, he was getting picked apart. But we also had a fighter that never quit, meaning his opponent was not hard enough to force him into submission. We had a fighter that was still looking to go the 12 rounds until the referee intervened, which I don't blame the referee. Me as a referee feel like I need to stop a fight to protect the fighter. That's just what I'm going to do. So I'm not knocking down the referee. But, you know, Angulo never really quit, meaning he never really felt the pain to quit. He never really felt the damage enough to actually quit as he did versus Lara. But he also never really dropped Canelo. Why didn't he drop Canelo? Simple. We go back to the same thing. He was not the same fighter. The fighter that was cutting the ring, applying pressure, and throwing punches. And therefore, you have two different fighters, two different fights. So please, as boxing fans, I ask you not to make those mistakes. Because I can sit here and say, well, Austin Trout, a lot of people believe he beat Canelo. A lot of people believe it was a draw with Canelo. But then we have Lara, who came in and actually won every single round. And we can say actually knocked him out, except he was saved by the belt. Right? Or no, he hurt him pretty bad and he was saved by the belt. Let's put it that way. He was going to be knocked out if that knockdown would have happened a little earlier, but it didn't happen. So he schooled Austin Trout. If I was to take that and reverse it to you guys, you would think I'm crazy, because you would come back to me and say, well, styles make fight. Right, and you would be right. We can never use this to say a fighter is going to win a fight because this and that. It's not the way to approach our matchmaking skills. It's not a way to sell our boxing knowledge to the world. It's not a way for those of you that gamble for you to gamble with your money. It's just not a way to do it because it's not a guaranteed way. Nothing's guaranteed, but there is bigger percentage in actually using real knowledge than using comparison, you know? So the keys to victories is what Canelo Alvarez needs to do is something that unfortunately I don't think he is able to do, which is apply pressure constantly. Why, you might say, if Canelo is such a explosive, such a hard-hitting fighter? Well, Canelo Alvarez is not a pressure fighter. Canelo is a boxer-puncher that is somewhat of a flat-footed, but also likes to move. However, he makes a mistake that he does not know how to combine movement with combination, right? Do I need to explain myself? That means throwing punches while moving his feet backwards or side to side. He does not do that, right? Canelo Alvarez is a fighter that needs to be flat-footed in order to engage on a combination, in order to offer a combination, in order to cause damage. So now we have a fighter that pretty much needs to fight out of his comfort zone in order to do something in this fight. When Canelo decides to do this, it's going to be a lot better for him if he decides to just apply constant pressure. But then again, how would his stamina react? Ranger, you don't get it. He has such a great stamina versus Angulo. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. We need to stop being blind here. He didn't have great stamina versus Angulo. He had the same stamina. And after the 6 rounds, he was dropping his arms to make you believe, oh, he's just playing with Angulo. Which in fact, yeah, he was playing with Angulo. But we also saw a Canelo that diminished in the output of punches. Now he wasn't throwing the same punches. Now he was breathing heavier. Now Angulo was starting to kind of move forward a little more, although he was still losing the round. Take that for what it's worth. If Canelo is able to apply constant pressure, he has a great shot at causing a lot of damage. If Canelo can learn throughout this boxing camp to box coming forward, to fight coming forward, to do all these things that is impossible to learn in such a short period of time, he is going to have a good night. Will Canelo be able to do this? A lot of people make the mistake of saying Canelo is a technician. He's not a technician. I'm sorry I keep coughing. As I said in my previous video, I'm still a little sick. Canelo is not a technician. Canelo is a decent fighter when it comes to technique. He possesses a lot of the basics. However, he is a fighter that likes to bob, weave, move, you know, a lot of head movement only when he's stationed in a spot. He cannot do that while moving. Again, no, you can go back to the fights and review it all you want. So that does not make him a technical fighter at all. That just makes him a fighter that it's learning the game of boxing, the techniques of bobbing and weaving. This is a new Canelo that we've been trying to see, that he's been trying to sell to the world. And he's doing a good job. He's still learning, I guess, as he progresses. A lot of people come to me and say, well, Canelo's just a kid. Stop. He's not a kid. He's a kid on age. But he's not a kid in the sport of boxing. He is what I would like to call a veteran. Anybody that's, let's see, he's 23 now, right? Anybody that's been fighting from the time he started, 40-something professional fights, plus an amateur career. I'm sorry, you're not a beginner. You're not a kid. You're an established fighter. If you're young, good luck. Good for you. How come he wasn't a kid when he was knocking all his bums out? How come he wasn't a kid when he fought Austin Trout? Well, how come he wasn't a kid when he was fighting Mayweather? How come he wasn't a kid when he was knocking 140-pounder Josecito Lopez? How come he wasn't a kid when he was fighting old Mosley? How come he wasn't a kid when he was beating up on punching bag Angulo? How come he wasn't a kid when he was fighting a shot fighter like Sing Trong, when he was knocking out Carlos Valdemar? He's a kid only when he's threatened, right? So we need to eliminate that. Keys to victories for Erislandy Lara. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The only thing Erislandy Lara has to do is what he's been doing, which is boxing people. However, I would like to see Erislandy Lara stay off the ropes a little more. He makes the mistake of clinching on the rope and staying there when he has the legs to move, circle around his opponent, and put his opponent on the rope. Erislandy Lara, there's a couple of things that can happen in this fight. When Erislandy Lara starts dominating Canelo Alvarez technically, because you can't sit here and say that Canelo is a better technician than Erislandy Lara. So when Erislandy Lara starts implementing his technique and starts dominating with his technique, a couple of things can happen. It can force Canelo Alvarez to fight the fight that Angulo fought, which will put him outside of his element and will force him to use a lot more of the gas that he wants to use. And he will open doors to Erislandy Lara to counterpunch, because now we have a fighter that's fighting outside his comfort zone, forcing himself to fight a style that he's not accustomed to, meaning that he's a lot more open for counter shots. Or if Lara dominates Canelo, Canelo has the choice of starting to back up. Now we have a fighter that as well is fighting outside of his comfort zone versus a technician that has been trained and has got the knowledge to fight whichever style, which is he can choose to move side to side, he can choose to fight moving back, he can choose to fight coming forward. There's a lot of things that can play in this fight. Obviously, does Canelo has a shot? Of course he does. He is a puncher after all, and a good shot can end anybody's night. And I'm sorry that I don't consider Canelo a huge puncher, but that's mainly because when was the last time he knocked out a credible 154 pounder other than Damaged Goods Angulo? When was the last time? Oh, you mean to tell me Carlos Valdemar, Sugar Shane Mosley, he dropped him? You really gonna say Sing Trong, Hatton's brother? When was it that he fought a credible 154 pounder and knocked him out? When? I don't remember, and I might be mistaken, but please refresh my mind. So now Canelo is facing somebody who is an actual natural 154 pounder, who actually has decent power, not a great power, but decent power, who is sharp in his shots, who is a southpaw that's a lot better a technician than the southpaw that he fought. So now we just got to wait, play the cards, and see how everything comes out. You know, he did good versus Trout. He didn't do good at all versus Mayweather. People say he learned so much. No, he didn't learn so much versus Mayweather. What do you learn on a loss like his loss versus Mayweather? The one thing you learn on that loss is that you got a lot of work to do. And coming back to fight a fighter like Angulo will not help you find out whether you have learned what you're supposed to learn. Because it's not the type of fighter that's going to bring out the new skills that you've learned. It's the type of fighter that you're going to implement a training section on him. So I want to give credit to both fighters, because these two fighters, Lara has been wanting Canelo, and now Canelo finally decided to fight Lara. And I want to give credit to these fighters because they're going to give us a fight that we want. It's not going to be for the title shot. Why is Canelo doing this? It's the same thing he did versus Angulo. when he chose not to come at the weight of 154. He chose to come a pound over and pay a fine. Why? Because of his advantage. It will give him advantage, his weight advantage versus Angulo. So I'm guessing he's wanting to do the same thing with Lara. He doesn't want to pay, I think it's some money for the belt or something like that. So I think he's going to try to do the same thing versus Lara, which is come over the weight limit. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter. I mean, if you actually think Lara cannot handle pressure, you must be out of your mind. Because if you're actually going to sit here and tell me that Canelo Alvarez applies more pressure than Paul Williams, you out of your mind. You're really out of your mind. If you're going to sit here and tell me that Canelo Alvarez applies more pressure than Angulo, you're out of your mind. If you're going to sit here and tell me that Canelo Alvarez is more talented than what Paul Williams was, you're out of your mind. Sure, he got knocked out. Anybody would. He got caught with a good shot, you know. Williams did. So don't tell me Lara ain't fought nobody that's helped him to prepare for Canelo. Lara has had the tools for Canelo since the moment he stepped into a boxing ring. You can bring up the Molina draw all you want to, but that's not going to help Canelo on that night. And as a matter of fact, that was a draw. So while you're bringing that, I invite you to go back to Canelo's career and look at his draw and really tell me what a robbery is. I'm sure I'll come up with more videos on this subject. But for now, this is what I have to tell you. Don't play with your emotions if you're going to bet on Vegas. Be smart about this. Look at who has the better chance of winning and put your money in that person. That's it for now. Drop your comments. Subscribe. And again, share this video on Facebook everywhere. Till then, I'm out.